Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from The Who, Rumble of Thunder, out September 2nd on Better Noise. The album has 12 tracks, 64 minutes in length, and this is the band's second full-length studio album. They are a Mongolian folk band. As far as the design goes, I like the fact that the album feels like an album. It doesn't feel like a compilation. It doesn't feel like one of those records that there's so many ebbs and flows, there's so many movements up and down that the album loses a little bit of its own self. It's really hard to find the path. It's really hard to find the journey. It's really hard to stay connected across every single track. This album oversimplifies the experience. And when you look at 12 songs, 64 minutes, it doesn't feel that way. The album feels a lot smoother than that. It feels a lot shorter, a lot more compact, and I think this speaks to the balance, to how cohesive the overall nature of the record is. Now, having said all of that, there's still some movement, there's still some ebbs and flows within the album because you want to make sure that the record is as dynamic as possible. You want to make sure that the experience is energetic. You want to make sure that the listener stays engaged with that same experience from beginning to end. And the only way to really do that is to throw in some caveats, to throw in some ripples into the album, into the song construction, into the soundscape, so that you feel like there are differences from song to song, but the differences come at a slow pace, or they come in a way that they're well integrated into the overall design and into the overall experience that the album gives. So it feels linear, it feels balanced, but then you still feel the changes that are happening within the songs and from song to song in a very subtle way, so that the overall experience doesn't rock itself. You don't shake the foundation of the record with a design like this and with the soundscape approach that they put together for this album. A soundscape that has big nature to it. Like, this record sounds larger than life. It sounds like it's been played outdoors. The sound travels extremely well throughout the entire record. It doesn't matter if the song has more of a folky drive. It doesn't matter if the song has more of a heavier drive. It doesn't matter the atmosphere that you're going to get from track to track. Every single song on this album feels like it has no borders. The sound travels, it expands, and you feel that experience within the songs. You're traveling with it. And this speaks of the production, the quality, and then obviously the musicianship that they have. In order to create a record like this, you have to have all the right pieces in the right place, because you have to make sure that the listener is able to digest all the different elements. This is a super layered record. There's a lot of different instruments, there's a lot of different sounds, there's a lot of different vocal approaches, there's just a lot on the plate. But you have to make sure that all of these elements are working with one another in order for the listener to better find its way through these songs. And I really felt that way about the album. I could hear all the different details, musically and vocally, throughout the entire album. I could hear them apart from one another, and then I could hear them the way they merge with one another in order to make the sound robust, in order to make the sound come to life. But the ability to make the album expand its footprint, make this sound travel, and not necessarily feel like it's bouncing off of a wall and coming back again, makes the record more impactful. It gives a lot more quality to the overall sound experience of this record. Now, within this record, the folkiness of the album, it's also a very important element. I would say it's the most important, or at least one of the most important element, the vocals being the second one. But the folkiness of this record is really interesting because while being the driver of the album, while being the driver of the band, while being one of the foundations of what you would come to expect from this band, I didn't feel like it was always in your face. I didn't feel like that was the driving force across every single song. It's always there, but it's not necessarily in the driver's seat every single time, at every single moment. This is also really important because you want to make sure that you adjust to it, you want to make sure that you appreciate it, and you want to make sure that that folkiness is creating the right atmosphere at the right time. But you don't want necessarily the album to sound one-dimensional across 12 songs, across 64 minutes. So you have to make ways, you have to be able to layer that folkiness, moving it into the forefront, moving into the backdrop, allowing it to have a little bit more mobility and not be as stagnant, so that the overall album wins with it. The overall album gains a lot more energy, gains a lot more light, it becomes brighter, once again easier to digest, which is a very important element when you have a record like this and when you have an album that stretches out over the 1 hour mark. As far as vocals are concerned, they are another instrument and they are the other side of the coin. When you look at this album, you see the folky sound, the folky elements, the folky instruments on one side of that coin, and on the other side is the vocal approach, the very dynamic vocal approach that in my opinion is more of an instrument than anything else, specifically on this album, really enhancing the beauty of the songs, using the backdrop, the musical backdrop, to push those vocals into the forefront, giving them different characters, different moods, different aromas, different lives, different sounds. Really interesting, super layered once again, very textured, but working hand in hand with the sound that's been created behind it. The two are pushing one another. It's not like there's one that pushes the other, but rather they push each other. Really interesting approach, really well blended, allowing the album to feel together across every single element, and allowing the vocals to be more than just vocals, and like I said, being another instrument in the overall sound, in the overall experience. Now, for an album that's over the 1 hour mark, I must say it feels a lot shorter. When you're listening to this record, you kind of lose track of time because it feels like every song is a different scenery on the journey that you're in. Like this journey of discovery is giving you different things to discover about the band, about their sound, about their background. So it's a very interesting record because every song feels like a different chapter, but they're all very interesting in their own way. So you're not necessarily looking forward to a specific chapter on this journey. You're just really engaged with the one that you're currently in. That allows time to pass by a lot quicker. It allows the album to have a lot more movement, a lot more fluidity, and this overall feels like a more mature record from the band. This definitely feels like an album that has more of a sense of the collective, not just including songs that have great individual quality but don't necessarily work well with one another. In this case, on this record, the songs have individual quality, but they also give quality to the collective. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Triangle. I love the simplicity of this track. It's not an overly complicated song in terms of how you perceive it, but in that simplicity works really well in order to make it memorable. It has a super memorable melody, and that melody almost has a little bit of a nursery rhyme feel to it, and that becomes an earworm from the beginning. And then the vocals on this track work as a secondary instrument really well from start to finish. And when you bring these two worlds together, when you have this incredible, memorable vocal approach with this incredible, memorable melody in the background, you have the right formula for a song that becomes more than just a track. It becomes almost an anthem, if you will. Really interesting track, really interesting construction. I love the overall movement. I love the vibe. I love the fact that the song stays simplified. It doesn't change too much. Perhaps you would say becomes a little bit repetitive, but the repetitiveness of the track makes the track what it is, and it is a song that stays with you. Earworm 100%. Next you have Teach Me, a very bouncy song. This is more of a pure anthem. It's a pure anthem from a musical point of view, and it's a pure anthem from a vocal perspective. The layers in the vocals, the backing vocals, the singing along vibe. I mean, this is a song that I felt like I was walking through the woods with a couple of friends and we were going to go build a bridge or build something or learn about something. I don't know. It had this brotherhood vibe to it. It's a song that exudes that brotherhood vibe in the sound, in the vocals, in the overall atmosphere, and then it just has a very bouncy nature to it. When you bring all of these elements together, you have a pure folk anthem on your hands. Last but not least, Tatar Warriors. Now, this song is the title of the song. When you think about this track, when you look at the title, the sound, the atmosphere, the elements, I mean, the way you hear the warriors, the horses, everything about this track, it's really to create a 4D picture of everything that is happening. Because you're not only listening to it, you can visualize it, and that's why I say it's 4D. It's one of those tracks that really texturizes itself, that really creates a visual effect of what it's trying to represent, not just through the sound, not just through the music, not just through the vocals, but all those atmospheric elements that they included into the track in order to enhance the experience, in order to make the song more visible to those that don't understand necessarily the lyrical content. An interesting track, great way to finish off the album because it feels like the most powerful song on the record. In my opinion, this is the heaviest track on the album. You hear the guitars, you hear the drums, the power that they have. It's almost like the horses are marching into battle. Really interesting approach, really interesting song. I love the fact that it was the closing track because it puts a little bit of an exclamation mark on the album, and it's a song that breaks a little bit from the more bouncy, from the more folky overall feel that the record has. Because of its heaviness, it doesn't really have any other place within the record but to close off the album. So perfect place for a song that has this sound, this sort of atmosphere. This is it. This is The Who with Rumble of Thunder, out September 2nd on Better Noise. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.